All right, hi everybody. Welcome to my session. So today we're going to be talking about the value of building GenAI agents on SAP application data. So to introduce myself, my name is Chi Su. I'm a solution architect with Databricks, leading customer engagements globally for our SAP team. So I've been having lots of customer conversations over the last 3 years about ERP, HANA, BW, and DataSphere integration. And also about this year, a lot of conversations about Business Data Cloud, what that partnership means to our customers, our joint customers with SAP and Databricks, depending on where they are in their S4 and RISE journey. So just a quick reminder that there will be a feedback survey, so please fill that out if you're able to after this session. That'll help us improve our sessions. So this is the news that was released last week that we announced that we are in the latest Gartner 2025 Data Science and Machine Learning Magic Quadrant, that we've moved up a little bit further. We were already a leader, and so now we are the leader, being the kind of the most upright and have leapfrogged above the big three clouds in terms of leadership. So something that's very, very, very proud of, and so and that's also, of course, part of this conversation is about around the data science and machine learning topic today. So we all know, right, that data and AI, especially AI and GenAI these days, is a hot topic for all customers across all industries, right? Customers are talking about that, and how do you get value from that across the different industries, right? Every single industry has use cases, and also all of line of business, horizontal line of businesses across all of these industries have AI and GenAI use cases, and so there's some Gartner analysis about kind of the value and the growth in AI software and so on. So of course, all of that, to have AI, you have to have a data foundation to have the AI, right? So to be able to train your AI, you need data. And SAP applications, and this is, of course, the most well-known application is SAP ERP, and that could be legacy ECC, as well as a modern ERP, S4HANA. Right? All of those are gold mines for data, right? Because the ERP is arguably kind of the heartbeat of the company, right? So when we say, hey, company XYZ closes the books, right, as in close the accounting books, well, that's done in the accounting system, which is in ERP, and SAP is the dominant player in the ERP market. And so, but that's not it, right? ERP is not the only product SAP sells. SAP has a very wide portfolio of all of these line of business applications. That's now, the terminology is business suite. So from the finance and accounting, and also to things like supply chain, logistics, and so on, but also to other non-ERP line of business applications like SuccessFactors for human capital management, Ariba for procurement, Concur for travel and expense, Fieldglass for contingent management, the CX portfolio of Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Customer Cloud, and so on for CRM and so on. Right? That's a very broad range of applications that are all generating very valuable enterprise data. And so those are the data that we need to combine with non-SAP application data, with IoT data, and so on and so forth, to be able to derive insights for analytics and for AI. Okay? But historically, SAP application data, especially SAP ERP data, has been very difficult to access for our customers. Right? And so that's the challenge for to build AI, is to be able to get access to the data, to the enterprise data. So this is where the partnership that we announced in February with SAP about Business Data Cloud, right? So what that takes is that there's a number of components to Business Data Cloud, some of which are existing components like DataSphere, Business Warehouse on RISE Private Cloud Edition, as well as SAP Analytics Cloud for BI and also for planning. Those are existing components. What's new is that SAP is OEMing Databricks, so that's called what we're calling SAP Databricks. That's the OEM version of Databricks that's tailored for AI/ML use cases on SAP-centric workloads and data sets. Right, so that's provided as part of Business Data Cloud in a seamless commercial manner, and also tightly integrated with Business Data Cloud and data products. And on the bottom here, you have the data product. So that's a brand new concept that SAP has introduced in Business Data Cloud, where the idea is that historically, think about how customers do their analytics, whether it is especially in non-SAP data platforms, is that they're extracting raw data from ERP. That could be ECC tables, could be S4 CDS views, and building out business logic to form, let's say, sales order business objects, purchase order business objects, or combining them to form order to cash as a business object in typically a non-SAP data platform, right? And that could be 30 years ago, that could be Teradata. 5 years ago, that could have been Hadoop, and these days is Databricks and our competitors. Right? So they're building out these data models to be able to have a data warehouse with the semantics of the SAP application data to be able to do the analytics, whether it's descriptive analytics all the way to advanced analytics, AI, and GenAI. Right? So first, to be able to do that, you have to have that semantic foundation of SAP application data. So the idea of the data products is that, well, you don't have to do that yourself because that's a lot of labor to do the ELT, extraction, load, and transform. SAP will do that for you, and that becomes a managed service. So that means quicker time to insight by outsourcing that so you don't have to deal with complexities and labor to build out the ELT. Right? So you go straight to the output of that T of the transformation is that these enriched data products that you can directly consume, they're ready for analytics, ready for AI. Right? So that's something, in my opinion, that's the most valuable part of Business Data Cloud is these concept of SAP curated data products for specific line of business applications, including S4 on the cloud, as well as SuccessFactors, Ariba, Concur, CX, and so on and so forth. But also there are some, SAP will be building cross-line of business applications, data products as well that span, let's say, an employee, right? An employee exists in S4 and an employee exists in SuccessFactors, or a business partner, right, which exists in S4 and also in Ariba to be able to build these richer cross-line of business data products as well. So that is something that's made available to customers of Business Data Cloud who are using native capabilities such as DataSphere, SAC, but also to us at Databricks as a partner, right? So Databricks customers can consume these data products as well in the form of using SAP Databricks, which comes, as I said, as integrated within Business Data Cloud and commercialized by SAP, or, right, so we have 12,000 plus customers. Many of you guys are here, right? There you are, existing Databricks customer. So what you have is native Databricks on the right. You already have existing Databricks. And so that will also be able to consume these data products and be able to do AI, ML, analytics, and so on. So a couple key things that SAP has adopted as part of this partnership. One is Delta Lake. Right, so Delta Lake is the open cloud storage format that we open sourced. Right, that we will be strong in, and so SAP has adopted that as the persistency format in their managed cloud storage. And second is the Delta sharing protocol, right, which is the only open data sharing protocol out there that we open sourced. So SAP, along with many other of our partners out there, has adopted that as well as the data sharing mechanism, as the open data sharing mechanism. And so that allows our customers to be able to access SAP ERP data, SAP data products in BDC without the traditional way, which is physically copying, replicating, and ETLing SAP application data. So these data products you see here in that blue box on the right within BDC is that these data products are managed by SAP's data engineering pipelines and persisted in SAP managed cloud storage within BDC, right? And then Databricks, whether you're a customer using SAP Databricks or native Databricks, you can consume those data products, including all those rich semantics on the fly. Right, without physically copying that data. You can directly do analytics, directly do ML flow or Mosaic AI and GenAI on top of that, right, without physically making a copy of that data. So that reduces data proliferation, and also, right, you still get the benefit of the SAP having done the data engineering to add the semantics to it. Right? And also, you may notice that the delta sharing arrow is implying bidirectionality. Right? So that's also very important is that it's not just, okay, well, Databricks customers want to get data out, that we can also bring insight back into the SAP analytic ecosystem. So, so those of you who watched the Unleash demo, when the Unleash event, when BDC was introduced on February 13th, there was a demo there of the use case of accounts receivable invoice forecasting, of taking invoice data, which is a data product that SAP has curated, and accessing it. In the case of the demo, it was in SAP Databricks, but you can do that with native Databricks as well, to access that on the fly and doing machine learning, to do just traditional predictive analytics to forecast the individual invoices, what's the payment date going to be. So now you have a ML inference data set that is managed by Databricks. So what we want to do is also to make that available to DataSphere without copying it into DataSphere's HANA memory, right? Making that available on the fly, and then DataSphere is able to read that, and then DataSphere can show that in an SAC dashboard. And so that's the end of the demo, and there's a similar demo at Sapphire a couple weeks back, where the demonstration was about SuccessFactors, is that you have headcount data and employee central kind of data, bringing that into Databricks, and similarly make some predictive analytics forecasting about attrition, and then bringing that back into DataSphere. But the possibility doesn't end there at this kind of analytical feedback loop, right? There's also quite a bit of potential for actually actioning back into ERP and into SAP applications, right? You could think about, okay, once I bring that insight about whether it's cash flow forecasting or invoice date or employee attrition and whatnot into DataSphere, then next step I could do is I could use services like BTP integration service to take action in the SAP transactional applications. Maybe I should go create a sales order, or if it's a predictive maintenance, maybe I want to go and create a work order to have a technician go inspect a piece of equipment that the Databricks ML has forecasted to have problems, potentially will fail. Right? So this is very interesting that this is actually a full life cycle of not just analytical, but also to take action. Right? That's very powerful. Okay, so let's use a banking example. So this is one of our, motivated by one of our customers who used GenAI in Databricks to be able to, and they were able to increase the engagement on the mobile app by over 4x. So traditional AI kind of chatbots is really about retrieving information, right? This is where you ask a question about, hey, you know, what kind of credit cards are relevant to me, and so on. And they were able to retrieve information. And techniques they use are things like retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which uses a vector database to fetch the information, to kind of limit the information set, and then bring that to an AI for summarization and so on, or fine-tuning to incorporate domain, right? Two different ways of incorporating domain knowledge, fine-tuning versus RAG. So this example here is that, hey, I want to know about, is my credit score high enough to open a new credit card? And then so here's some information that's relevant to here's where you go to find the right cards and apply, versus something as more a proper agent is much more proactive, right? And is able to provide recommendations and assist you in a proactive way. So it might be that, okay, so the same question, same prompt, different kind of response is that, okay, well, you know, in addition to some recommendation about the credit card and also other things like looking at your trips and providing recommendations on the trips as well. So that's kind of the more proactive example, okay? And so thinking about building these kind of chatbots or these kind of GenAI or powered chatbots, there are a number of things that you need to do. That first is that the data silos, right? So, okay, you know, we might have a database about all the credit card offerings and so on, right? But more than that, what else could we possibly use that will make this interaction much more engaging, right? Things like we might want to look at this customer's mobile app history, going to the back-end banking system to see what transactions they have made, right? So there's all kinds of additional information, or look at the multi-channel, or what they're doing on the mobile app, on the website, versus in the customer service that they're calling in to the customer service center, looking at the interactive voice response IVR system. Like that multi-channel, omni-channel information, customer 360 is very important, obviously, right? To be able to break that silo. So that requires having a data platform that allows you to access all of those data, and also the lookup functions and so on, to be able to tap into these different sources to look up information. And then the second is that using the foundational models is that, do we have access to the right tooling to have, you know, the state-of-the-art foundational models, the AI, the best AI, right? So tomorrow, right, if the next DeepSeek comes out, do we have the ability to leverage that? Or are we kind of stuck with whatever foundational models a particular platform is offering us? Right? And then the pre-built connectors and functions, to use basically a toolkit that helps you pre-build things to help you build out integrations and so on faster, so that you can get the data that you need faster and then be able to build the GenAI in a more effective manner. Okay. So this is the philosophy behind our data intelligence platform. It's all about democratizing data and AI, right? So this is where you think about general intelligence is really about, you know, what Facebook and others are doing in the community, which is super important, is building a general intelligence model using publicly available data sets, right? But that, what you need is not, I would argue, is not sufficient, is that you as an enterprise, you need access to your own customer data, but also your proprietary knowledge, right? So if you're a equipment company, to think about your internal manuals, or any company, think about your internal wikis and information about processes. You think about, if you're an HR professional, thinking about your human resource HR policies, right? All of these are proprietary data sets, proprietary knowledge. You want to incorporate them, depending on the use case, into your AI. Right? So to be able to do that, so that's the data intelligence, is that it's leveraging enterprise data, right? Not just whatever data is available to Llama to train on the internet and so on. And so this is where we are pretty early on. We were early leader in that in February of 2024, that our co-founder, Matej, who leads a research lab, in addition to his job being a co-founder working at Databricks, he also leads a research lab at Berkeley, came up with this paper about multi-model compound agent systems. Is that really thought that to have agents to be very effective, that you really need a multiple steps and also multiple components and multiple agents collaborating together. That gives you the richness and to be able to do more accurate AI and also to be able to take action and be more effective. Right? So first is that, so these building blocks on the left, you see that is to be able to reason over your data. So this is more about breaking silos that we talked about in the previous slide, right? So kind of generalize to say the SAP and the non-SAP silos. Right? Historically, that's been there because SAP ERP data especially is very difficult to tap into. To be able to tap into that, as well as your non-SAP IoT, Salesforce, whatever data, all of that data to be able to tap into that. Because that's your enterprise data specific to you as a customer. Right? And then to be able to understand and evaluate your models. Right? So the key question to ask is, for whatever framework that you're using, Databricks, non-Databricks, whatever, can you answer this question, which is, what is the accuracy performance of my model? Right? Are you able to answer that? And then the next question, if you are able to, is that, okay, do I know how to improve my model? Right? Do I have a way to get to that? Right? So these are, we'll dive into a little bit deeper a little bit later as well on that. And then governance. Right? So what we don't want is to so I just said in breaking the silos that I want all the data. Right? But you also have to think about that very carefully is that depending on who's using the GenAI, so I want GenAI to have access to all the data, but when the AI is being invoked, I don't actually necessarily want all that data to be available. So think about, in the SAP context, is that I am a finance or accounting analyst, right? And I work in the United States for a multinational company, and I want to do some GenAI about general ledger or AP, accounts payable, accounts receivable, whatever that may be. Okay, well, the enterprise should not give me all of finance, all of general ledger, right? Because I'm not privy to see the general ledger finance data for Europe, because that's not my function, right? My function is US finance or accounting analyst, right? So in that case is that the GenAI should have all the access data, but the GenAI should also respect the role of the user and not give them more data than they should be privy to, right? So this is very important, is that you don't want to be building data access framework, right? That's work that's very important, but hopefully you don't have to build that yourself in every single GenAI system. That it should come out of the box to respecting the access control policy of the user who is invoking the AI, right? So this is where our philosophical design of AI and data is all tied into Unity Catalog, and Unity Catalog is the mechanism that provides this very granular access control, right? So that when you have an AI and it's invoked by me, the US finance analyst, automatically the AI is going to respect that, and I'm only going to get AI responses based on the data that I can see, which is, in this case, US finance data and not Europe finance data. Right? So that's super important, especially in this kind of enterprise application data space, whether it's you're talking about finance data or you're talking about HR data and so on. Okay. So in our Mosaic portfolio, this is just a small sample of some of the key capabilities, and why there's this kind of bar in the middle is that on the left is more of a classical ML. On the right is more about this agentic and things like that, right? And GenAI capabilities. Right? So what we offer historically have been things like MLflow, which is the industry-leading open source framework for full ML lifecycle. Right? Everything from data preparation to model training, experimentation, to model deployment. Productionalizing a model, deploying that in an endpoint of whether it's a real-time inference or batch inference, and then to model refinement, monitoring, to monitor for data drift as well as model drift. And then to GenAI, right, which is there, we have a different slide here. That's also, there's a lot more capabilities there. This is just a small sample of that, and we'll have some significant announcements coming over the next 2 days, so look for that in the keynotes. So first, of course, just as with classical ML, we need to prepare the data, right? And then some GenAI specific capabilities, for example, the vector database, right? To be able to do things like RAG, you need the vector database as a component, and then the building agents to be able to have access to state-of-the-art commercial as well as open source foundational models, right? And also classical ML models in some cases as well, and having the framework to be able to get additional data to provide lookup functions to go look at, let's say, go to a CRM database to look up customer records, right? The example we're talking about with that banking chatbot, to be able to go to the interactive voice IVR system to look up, what's the call history, what this person did with customer service when they called in, and so on. Right? So these are functions and tools, so you need a framework to be able to tap into data from different sources. And then once you have developed your agent, right, kind of deploying the agent, right, framework for that, the ML ops, and also understanding the lineage of what the agent is doing. And then the evaluation is super important, is that, so I posed the question to you guys, which is that, do you know what's the accuracy of your of this agent or of this model, right? So to do that, how do you need to do evaluation? So the evaluation has multiple parts. There's a gold standard data set. How do I curate a gold standard data set? Do I need to go hire a bunch of army of people to label data so that there's a gold standard label and then I can evaluate against? And once I have that label data set, how do I evaluate it, right? So do I just have humans go prompt these questions and then evaluate the answer? Do I use, right, one industry trend is using LLMs as human-like judges to be able to do this kind of evaluation. And then tracing is also important, is that thinking about what you're doing, right, because we just talked about multi-agent, right? So there's a lot of different components, right? I did this lookup function to go to the IVR system to look up what the customer did in the customer service call center, right? And then I had this different LLM steps where I'm calling a Llama model and I'm calling a DeepSeek model or whatever. A is the measuring the accuracy, right, which requires this gold standard data set of the ground truth and then be able to evaluate. But also, right, so that's the accuracy part of performance, and there's also a latency part of performance. So I want to be able to, in this complex agent orchestration that I'm doing, I want to understand, be able to look into individual steps and understand how the performance has changed, whether it's accuracy or latency performance, right? I will want to know, okay, my whole holistic agent got slower, but is it because of a particular step? Oh, because the lookup to this IVR database somehow slowed down, right? Do I even have the visibility to be able to dive down to even see that level of detail? Then I can go look, okay, why is that? Because that database is overloaded or whatever? Or is it because in the Llama model that I'm using, that whoever's hosting it for me for serving has slowed down for whatever reason, right? Is it because of my quotas are running low or whatever? So, and then on the governance side, there are a number of capabilities that we're providing for guardrails, so very basic things like profanity and so on, but also more interesting twists to the guardrail that you might not think about is like corporate branding standards, right? So the way you as a brand talk about certain things, right, you might want to impose that, right? Which is very, very different from like things like profanity and those kind of things that you don't want in the GenAI response, right? And then, of course, the things like usage tracking to be able to, you're centralizing the management of the access to, let's say, Azure OpenAI, and to be able to manage tokens, set rate limits for specific groups of users, and so on, and the centralizing management of the credentials, and so on. So there are a lot of things, because GenAI is complex, especially multi-agent setups are complex, to be able to manage this end-to-end with a lot of these well-thought-out features. Okay, and so this is one customer example where we're able to leverage the multi-agent and to these things about using these multiple agents working together, we're able to significantly increase the accuracy of the offers and also kind of increase the user engagement as well. Okay, so in this slide, right, so we just want to quickly talk about enhancing the decision making. Is that so this domain-specific AI, right, what that means is that, as we said, incorporating you as an enterprise, your SAP and non-SAP data, right, being able to tap into all of that, breaking the data silos, which really enhances the AI, and I would argue that makes the AI more accurate, right, versus just having AI on SAP only part of the house and versus having AI on the non-SAP part only of the house. Really combining both sides and providing all of that data really makes your AI more accurate. Right? Have all of that AI enterprise data connected to any GenAI model that have that available at your fingertips, the commercial ones as well as open source ones, right? Without worrying about how do I host the latest version of Llama 4.0 or whatever that comes out, right? And doing that in a cost-effective way, and also having all the guardrails about safety and reliability and kind of being able to monitor and diagnose the quality and also the latency performance aspect of that. So this is where really Business Data Cloud and the partnership comes through with us by providing seamless access to SAP application data and also the semantics of that, very important, right? So we don't have to do a lot of extra work of data engineering to curate these SAP application data, combining with the power of Databricks that we just talked about over the last few slides about our native capabilities for building custom AI, and whether it's classical AI, ML to GenAI. Right. Okay, so let's switch to do 2 demos. So the first one is a notebook. So one of the, in February, when Business Data Cloud was launched and the initial set of what's called working capital data products were released, and it includes, it's a subset of S4 Finance. So it includes things like accounts payable, accounts receivable, working capital, general ledger, cash balance, day sales outstanding, and so on. And so one of those things is, of course, is the cash flow data, right? So these are SAP curated data products. So we're going to look at the cash flow data product. So this is what that tabular data product looks like in Databricks. So actually, I'll run past it. Right here, so you see the cash flow ID, company code, transaction date, transaction amount, currency, and so on. Right? So that's just a sample of what that tabular data set looks like from the SAP curated cash flow data product. Let's aggregate it, because there's a lot of columns that we don't necessarily, a particular cash flow analyst may or may not need. So let's aggregate it to the company code, transaction date, currency, and the currency amount, and the number of transactions. Right, so that gives us to only 311 rows. I think this is the whole data set was about 10,000 rows. So let's aggregate it 311 rows. Then let's take that tabular structured data set and just turn it into a big string, right? And because we have to do LLMs, right, we have to prompt it with text. Right. So that's the prompt. Well, that's the text part of the prompt. So then there's the context. So we need to provide some system context, and that is, hey, you are a cash flow analyst, and here's the tabular data. Each row, what each row kind of explaining, helping the LLM, this is what the row means. And then for a particular company code and transaction date. And then, hey, here's the action part. Can you give me a summary of the data, any interesting insight that may be actionable? And then write it in the form of an email that I can send to the cash flow manager for review. Right? And then, so specifically here, we're calling the Anthropic Claude model, right? And you could be calling your model, your favorite model, whether it's Azure OpenAI, or one of those like O4 model or something, or any other Vertex models and so on, any commercial or open source model that you like. And then here's the response. So we're not going to look through every single bit of it, but very quickly, right? So think about, right, this is where we talk about the power of AI is to make people more productive. So this is something that I think about your cash flow analyst normally would do, slice the data and do some analysis. It might take minutes or hours to do, that the AI has already been able to do very quickly about total transaction volumes, these kind of summary statistics. And then these are the high value transactions. And then currency exposure, because we are a multinational company here. And then seasonality patterns. And then here's the interesting recommendations for interesting insights, right? Is that, okay, so you have some large outflow, so maybe you want to look at that. Is that anomalous, or is that normal course of business? And this offsetting transactions, high volume days, currency risk. Maybe you want to hedge currency because you're doing a lot of work, a lot of business in Japanese yen. And then specific recommendations about deep diving into transaction patterns for a particular company code. What they're doing, maybe you might want to do optimizations there. The yen currency exposure management, hedging, and then verification of these unusually large transactions, right? So again, right, the point about this is very helps with productivity, right? So that this is something very quick that AI just did, right, without having the cash flow analyst spend a bunch of time. Now, this is hopefully accurate, but something might want to you might want to actually have a cash flow analyst review this information before sending that email to the cash flow manager. But this is something that's very quick, right? That was just done within a few seconds. The AI is able to come with these interesting insights that would probably take an analyst quite a bit of time to manually come up with these kind of insights, right? So that's the power. It's a very, very simple example that to showcase kind of the power of GenAI, right? So then this is a very straightforward, just bring a tabular data set. You're essentially telling the AI, hey, show me something interesting, do some summaries and so on, right? And then the next one is the kind of a different art of the possible is that we're doing this is a demo recorded video. It's a 4-minute long video to show a chatbot, right? And this is the multi-agent. So this is a mock-up. So it's not like actually a functioning system, but it's a mock-up to show art of the possible.
To give some background, we built this FinBot to answer corporate finance simulation and what-if scenarios using enterprise finance data. Specifically, we're analyzing SAP S4 HANA finance data, including accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash flow, cash balance, and more. If you're interested in analyzing these valuable data sets, they are data products that are part of the Working Capital Insights app made available by SAP Business Data Cloud to Databricks via zero-copy delta sharing. So let's ask our first question. Given economic contraction in the GDP, as well as high inflation over the next 6 months, simulate the impact on our cash flow by business unit and also generate some mitigation strategies. We see here that the AI has finished reasoning using the available data. And we see here the impacts on the different business units, on the cash flow, and also the driving factors. And we also see the risks from the cost side as well as the revenue side, and both sides being squeezed. That leads to working capital pressure. And so we see that with the AI came up with the mitigation strategies with the first bullet, and the third one to address on the cost side, and then with the second one with the accounts receivable collection to address on the revenue side. Right? And so how the AI went about this, we see down the right in the intelligence panel, where we see the first step with the Monte Carlo simulation by first obtaining the economic data and then combining that with the finance data to perform the Monte Carlo simulation, and then using AI to generate recommendations based on the simulation output to address the identified risk factors. And then with this output, we can also use some thumbs up, thumbs down, and provide feedback so that the LLM can be further refined through fine-tuning. Okay. Next, before we take any action, let's dig deeper to identify the root cause of the cash shortfall. So we're asking the AI to break down the projected liquidity gaps by month and also by business unit. And we see here is that there's the analysis by month, by business unit, and also by business unit, the gap as well as the driving factors, similar to what we saw in the previous question. And here, the AI is showing, the intelligence panel is showing the steps of disaggregating the Monte Carlo simulation results and then using AI to summarize the key contributing factors. So in the third question, let's simulate the first strategy offered by the AI in the first question. So what would be the cash flow impact if we applied across the board OpEx reduction across all business units? So there we see is that we see the output here of the changes based on that what-if scenario of reducing OpEx spend, and we see this improvement in liquidity position, which is good news. But how did the AI get to that? And what we see here on the right is that in this case, FinBot is leveraging SAC planning to allocate the cost reduction. And how this is achieved is via SAP Databricks delta sharing its data sets via zero-copy delta sharing to SAP DataSphere, which in turn is accessed by SAC Planning via a live connection, which is the seamless planning capability that was introduced in the Q4 of last year. And then in the second step, SAP Databricks is analyzing and summarizing the outputs of the SAC Planning generated plan. That's how we arrived at the output and revise the liquidity position. Let's explore how we can use SAP Databricks to build a GenAI system on SAP Enterprise Application Data as demonstrated via chatbot. To give some background, we built it.
Okay, And so this, yeah. So in closing, so we already had a session this morning with one of our product management colleagues talking about using SAP data and Databricks SQL, also through the Business Data Cloud partnership. We have a session with SAP colleagues this afternoon about the Business Data Cloud partnership, as well as the additional session tomorrow morning with SAP colleagues. A similar topic as this session about fueling AI with SAP data products. And then in the afternoon, around lunchtime, we have colleagues from our product management team, including the Delta Sharing PM Darshana, talking about the Business Data Cloud connector for Delta Sharing to native Databricks. And then there's a session in the afternoon with the product leaders from us, as well as from SAP, and also from Salesforce, talking about this paradigm of zero-copy Delta Sharing, since Databricks has a similar partnership with the Salesforce as well. Kind of have this federated data lake concept of SAP, of Databricks compute, being able to access kind of enriched data from Salesforce, from SAP, and be able to do analytics and AI and so on. Okay. So with that, we have a couple minutes for questions. So just open it up to the room. Hey, in the back.
Implementations, like some of the problems always become with like the accuracy, and so people get frustrated because the LLM generated results aren't good enough, and it's like, hey, why waste my time? I was wondering if you have seen that, how you kind of work through that, and any other comments there.
Yeah, so I mean that's where the LLM evaluation framework comes in, is that to be able to have a ground truth data set that is labeled, right? So that's the accuracy, and use whether it's a human judge or LLM judges to evaluate based on that, right? Because to be able to accurately, kind of objectively measure accuracy, you really need to have a ground truth of, this is the correct answer to this problem, so that you can detect things like hallucinations and so on, right? So now, of course, there's a lot more nuance to that, right? So definitely, just definitely reach out to your Databricks account team if you're a customer, and kind of have that discussion with the solution architect, and also we can bring the right subject matter experts to talk about that. Thanks. Yeah, back here.
Assuming you have authorization in SAP or BDC,
Uh-huh.
let's say you have your warehouse management, and the users can only see spend analysis for their plans. Now, if they use AI Genie, will they only get data for their plans, or they get?
So there's actually more nuance to your question, right? So your question was, the example you use in warehouse management, we can also use finance as well, right? So kind of like the one I mentioned about finance analysts, is that, so first is that the access control of, let's say, an S4, or in your case, EWM, is not actually transparently transferred over to Databricks, right? So today, what you have to do in the early phases of our partnership, you would actually have to define that from scratch in Databricks. That's something that we're working jointly with SAP BDC Engineering to be able to enhance the Delta Sharing protocol to be able to pass through access control policies, so that we can seamlessly understand that and then apply that, right? But then today, you do have to apply that, right? So let's say you do that manually and applying the access control policy, but we do also have consulting partners who can help you with automatic replication of ERP and SAP application, including BW, access control policies in Databricks as well. So that's a separate conversation. But once you have defined that in Databricks, then yes, whether it's Genie, which is our text-to-SQL tool, or other things like Mosaic GenAI and agents and so on, we'll be able to respect you, the Databricks user, whatever your role is, and the security policy has been defined in terms of what plans or what plants or what company code information you can see. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yeah. Yeah, so Joule Agents today has a fairly new, the Joule has a release of Joule support for DataSphere, right? So I see that's probably where we can potentially have an integration point. This is something that's still in the works about potentially using DataSphere, since we have the bidirectional Delta Sharing with DataSphere. So DataSphere has access to Databricks curated data sets, right? So then Joule can access that, because it looks just like a DataSphere data set to Joule, to the Joule agent, right? So that could be potentially, and then this is also in discussions about further advancements and other deeper Joule integrations with especially SAP Databricks, which is considered a SAP product. So you could do that. It's a little bit more complicated, is that you can do Databricks federation to DataSphere, which is through the HANA right, which is through HANA, right, using the OpenSQL schema. You can also do the same thing with BW, but then BW, this is where you need to have you need to have HANA Enterprise Edition license for BW, and then expose BW objects as calculation views, and then Databricks can directly federate to that. Yeah, well, federation, the existing federation is zero copy, and then what's new in BDC is that BDC with BW Data Product Generator, which requires BW on RISE, that materializes it in the SAP managed data store, right? That's also a live connection through Delta sharing. And also in the future, DataSphere models will be able to be materialized as a custom data product as well, and that's also Delta sharing. Right? So you have the federation, which already exists, versus the Delta sharing-based dynamic access. So it looks like time is up. I'm going to be in the back of the room for a couple minutes before I run over to my next meeting. So yeah, so stay around if you have a few questions.